On today's Eye of Power podcast, it's my pleasure to welcome back to the show Ryan Williamson, who's a doctor of neurology and board certified neurologist, understands a lot about the brain, and he is somebody who we got a lot out of the core things to pay attention to the first time he was on the show. And this week, this particular episode, we dive a little bit into the issue of memory, and that goes into some of the technologies that we talk about. And I found it absolutely super valuable, and I hope you do too. So, without any further ado, help me welcome Ryan Williamson to the show. Welcome to the Eye of Power podcast. I'm your host, Tom Dardick. But this podcast is not about me. It's about you and your power. It's time to claim yours. So welcome back to the show, Ryan. I don't know if I've had a repeat guest. You may be my first repeat guest.
Honored to be back, Tom. It's always a pleasure. You know how much fun I have with
well,
you. So,
I love the dynamic where it's just two friends talking, right? And we happen to be talking about a subject that we both have some passion for. You have a lot more expertise in the horsepower aspect of how the brain functions and how the body functions, and hopefully that'll be useful to whoever wants to listen to our conversation. But I had a recent thing that I wanted to run by you happen to me, and I think about it a lot. I've had similar things happen to me before, but it's one of those things that kind of threw me for a loop. And that is, I was watching the Dylan biopic that was on recently, and the story of Bob Dylan, and very inspirational. I've always respected his work and liked it, but I didn't know that much of his story and didn't really appreciate the true mastery and artistry that he really. I mean, he really blazed a trail. Anyway, my connection to Bob Dylan I have a story about him, and that is that I had gone to school with his daughter. And I remember her name is Ellen Fitzgerald. And I never said I knew her. I don't think I never said I met her, but I just had this memory that I had gone to school with Ellen Fitzgerald. So as the movie was going on, and it gets to be 1964 and 1965, I'm like, wait a minute here. She would have had to have been born before this. So I go to his biography, and he doesn't have a daughter named Ellen. He doesn't have a daughter that age. So in other words, I had this false memory that I thought was the truth for decades.
mm,
And I don't know how I got it, whether it was something that somebody told me at the time, or I'm not exactly sure how it got in there, but I had this false memory, clearly false,
mhm.
and it made me it kind of threw me in the sense that it's like, okay, how many of my memories are solid and how many are just fanciful, that are just either completely bogus like that one, or so distorted from what reality was that it's pretty much useless.
Mhm.
So and I've had other experiences like this too, where it's like, wow, I really thought this happened, and find out through others that it didn't. And we rely so much on our memories and all the stories we tell ourselves, the narrative. It kind of helps us frame our viewpoints and how we navigate the world and all of this. So I wanted to dive into that, whether it be false memories or the nature of memory or how we protect our memory, those sorts of things, from the perspective of somebody who is an expert in how the brain works. So I want to just lay that out and get your kind of reaction to that.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to go through there. So that's interesting. And thanks for being vulnerable and sharing something, because I know that's probably a little unsettling to.
It's so unsettling because it's
It,
like, what else? Like, is my whole life just this whole big fantasy that didn't really happen?
yes. Well, the first thing that came to mind, I don't know if you caught me sort of smirking. It was not at you. I was thinking how many regular conversations I have with my wife Corey, where I am convinced that something in fact happened, and she is convinced that in fact something else happened. And so this is a very common situation, I think, for anyone who's in a relationship or has friendships of any kind. This is very familiar territory, and I think for good reason and for several reasons. In the setting of what you would call this false narrative or false memory, I think everybody should know that your brain is a processor. And it is a supercomputer that is designed to make sense of, decode, reprocess, store, access, whatever function we're talking about, the inputs that you give it. And if you, in fact, met Miss Fitzgerald at some point in
Mhm.
your earlier life, or this was some story that was told to you in childhood, or insert input here, doesn't matter. That's a belief that you've held on to for some reason because your brain has constructed it that way. And that's been a core part of your, not your identity, but of your memories, right? For these number of years. And then come to find out later that, of course, this is maybe not true, which is unsettling, and hence causes you to question everything else. So this is the brain tells a story and the brain creates a reality. The reason I'm saying I'm referring to it as a processor is that it constructs this narrative or story or reality around, again, what we live every day. And a very extreme example of this, there's a disorder called Wernicke's encephalopathy. So I'm going to go down a rabbit hole here to try to make a
Okay, that's
parallel.
fine.
So just hang with me on this. But this is a disorder of thiamine deficiency in the brain. Thiamine is vitamin B1. Vitamin B1 is a necessary cofactor for neurons to function, and in particular for our memory cells to function. And I'll come back and we'll go through the whole how memories are stored in a minute. It's particularly relevant in alcoholics. That's usually where we see this. And I'm not drawing parallels between you and alcoholics, Tom, to be clear, but only to relay the point that these people cannot form new memories, and they lose access to many old memories, and they just confabulate. They just tell these tales that are just wild, and you hear one of these people talk. And you go, "Oh, how in the world? Where is this coming from? Or how is this person getting this information?" And it's because there's no reference point for these particular memories, for these particular people, that the brain is trying to construct some reality around whatever's left or whatever reference points they do have. And it makes no sense to anybody that knows them, and it makes no sense to a doctor that might be seeing them in the hospital or whatever. That's a very extreme example, but the point I'm trying to illustrate here is that the brain tries to just fill in gaps and make things up and make it make sense, even when it might not. Does that kind of make sense, at least analogously?
Yeah, I'm thinking we're interpolating and extrapolating a bigger, more cohesive picture out of pieces that because
Yes.
we have limited perceptive powers. I say that all the time in the Eye of Power podcast. So we don't know what we don't know. So we're left to either build on past and make pieces into something that makes sense to us,
Hmm.
fill in gaps. And I've experienced or I've read material that is really comical in terms of the degree to which the brain can do these kinds of things. I'm reminded of the show Brain Games. I don't know if you ever saw that series.
No.
It's on one of the one of the cable channels, Learning Channel or something like that. Anyway, the Brain Games are all these different kinds of classic experiments done in a entertaining way of just how easily the brain is fooled or some of the things we do. And they do things like somebody comes in to check in at a hotel, and
Hmm.
the person who's working at the desk will drop down and they'll come up with glasses on, or they'll come up and it'll be a different person, or it'll be like all these different things, and most people are missing huge things. The
Yeah.
classic one, of course, is the you count the number of times the guys pass the basketball and there's a gorilla. Now, did you see the gorilla? And then you
Yes.
look back, it's like the gorilla was there. You didn't see the gorilla. So in other
Yes.
words, we really do see in tunnel vision. We do not see the world.
Yes.
But then the memory is our recording. We think it's a recording. Like I
Yes.
always thought it was like, I think it's a video recording, but it's really not, is it?
Correct. You bring up several interesting and funny points here, and I think it's almost like a prank show. That sounds actually quite hilarious
It's great. It's fan
yeah.
If you see it on YouTube or wherever, check it out. You love it. You
Yeah.
absolutely love it.
Well,
There's different story. One of the things others like the amount of differences between people who witness things.
hmm
So like you're seeing the same thing happen, but people will, 11 people will say 11 different things happen. It's really
hmm
wild. Anyway,
Again, several interesting points here. For one, there's a kind of a famous story that I think most medical students hear of about radiologists interpreting images, and they get these expert radiologists to look at chest X-ray after chest X-ray, and they're looking for pneumonias and pleural effusions and all these things and tumors, and they will actually insert a picture of a gorilla, and 99% of radiologists miss it because that's not what they're trained to look for, which is very interesting. Along that front, we have every second our body or our brain is fed about 11 million bits of information per second. It's
Wow.
a massive amount of information. However, your consciousness is only able to process about 50 bits of information per second. So orders of
Holy smoke.
magnitude, yeah, orders of magnitude less. So the point being that, and I mean, for what it's worth, even if it were, I don't know, an order of magnitude greater, Tom, we'd be so overwhelmed, it'd be really hard to get anything done, right? And the kind of an example I give in my book, The Incredible Brain, is that I walk the reader through kind of what this looks like as far as information transfer. And I say something like, you probably weren't aware of the precise sensation of the way your clothing feels on the back of your left thigh until I draw your attention to it. And when you think about it, you go, oh, yeah, like I can perceive that now. But that was just there and you weren't aware of it, to your point, because we're focused on having a conversation, and I'm trying to remember how memory works in the brain, and you're worried about this experience, and listeners are listening to this podcast. So it just, we can only direct our focus in a very, very specific manner, and that's for efficiency's sake. I mean, our brain burns really hot. I think we may have covered this on our first show, but your brain, for being only about 2% of your entire body weight, takes 20% of your body's total energy supply,
Wow.
which is
I don't remember that
massive.
one.
Yeah, so massive, massive energy requirement. And same, I mean, it burns so hot that, about 40 or so percent of your total body heat's released from your head, which is why a beanie or a head covering is so impactful when you're out in the cold, because you can retain a lot of body heat that way. But that's because this thing's running really hot.
You
Do
said it's 2% of your body weight and burns what?
20% of your total body energy supply. That's technically measured in a percentage of what's called cardiac output, which is how much blood your heart pumps through your body a minute. But your blood delivers oxygen, glucose, nutrients, etc. So that's all the energy is 20%. So very, very high demand. The only other organ that's really close is the kidney, and that's just for filtration purposes. But if anyone tells you that your kidneys are doing your thinking for you, you should probably run. Anyway,
Unless I really have to go to the bathroom.
right, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, please, yeah, exactly. The kidneys are amazing. Don't get me wrong, but I think the brain's slightly more interesting. So the focus is important, and of course information either enters the brain or it doesn't. And so I see a lot of patients and clients that they have concerns about their memory, and part of my job is to figure out, well, is this really a memory issue, or is this really an attention issue? And what I mean by that is, Tom, if you or I or anybody never encounter the factually correct piece of information that we need to store in our brain, it's never gonna make it in because it never had a chance to be stored in the first place. And it's so simple, that sounds intuitive, but I think I mean, again, we're always in a hurry and always thinking about different things. But if we miss that critical point to be able to focus on something, to actually learn it the first time, then it never gets stored appropriately anyway. So that's kind of potential number one, or process number one. Number two, this happens all the time. I mean, we do learn things incorrectly. I mean, we could have a teacher teach us something that's not factually true, which is part of why education is so important and having quality inputs, right? And I think every parent wants the best educational opportunities for their children possible. So having a quality source of information. We've talked about this too, but one of the reasons I'm doing this is to try to provide more quality information for people on the health front, because there's a lot of misinformation out there by people that probably shouldn't be talking about health related content. Just like you wouldn't want me giving tax advice or talking about how to change the oil on your car, right? I mean, same idea. We all have our respective areas of expertise. So
Stay in your lane, bro.
stay in your lane. Exactly. Yes. Try to do that best I can. So there's that aspect. And you brought this up too, with different people kind of perceiving different things or recording different experiences. But even the example of, well, I give this example a lot of, again, I'll go back to my wife, Corey, because this is kind of interesting. My wife's an identical twin. And you probably haven't met Casey yet. I'm sure you will at some point.
No, I didn't meet Casey. I met Corey, but not Casey. Yep.
Yes, they're very hard to tell apart. And we've been together for, gosh, almost 12 years now. And I mean, if her sister walks in the room and she's my peripheral vision, I will address her as if she's my wife to this day. They look that much alike. They sound that much alike until I actually hear them or look directly at one of them. Again, visual information coming into my photoreceptors, not on the fovea, which is the central part of our visual acuity for our retina. So if it's just sort of blurry, Corey looking figure that sounds like her, I just assume it's my wife, which is very interesting. I could go many
That's
directions there,
that.
but
Well, there's got to be some stories there. At least
yeah.
one.
There are lots of family jokes, I'll say that. But the point I wanted to make here is that the two of them growing up, and they've done twin studies on things like this. You could really use any sibling. I just think a twin example is interesting because it's
Sure.
genetically kind of the same person if they're identical. Corey and Casey growing up grew up in the same house, under the same circumstances, with the same parents, the same older sisters and their family, yet they turned out to be two very different people because of their life experiences and because of their perspectives. And even if you take a genetically identical person and sit them on opposite ends of the same table, Corey's visual field is looking in this direction and Casey's is that direction.
Yeah.
And so like I mean I can see that my bookcase is behind me, but I'm not looking at my bookcase right now. I'm looking at you on my screen and I see my light and my window and the microphone I bumped. Um, so again, depending on just what your physical orientation in the world is, provides a different input that then provides a different reality for you. And when it comes to recording and forming memories, again, I think this is important because how we hear things, how we approach and appreciate things, and how we process things is different just based on our given circumstances. So there's that angle to consider as well. So there's a lot that feeds into this. And again, between the narrative and the perspective and the what are you focused on and not, and how did you hear something, and was it the right information, and how did it get stored? And I mean, before you know it, you were drinking beer with Bob Dylan last week, and you never met the guy, right? So,
Yeah, he's my friend. He comes over to my house all the
right.
time. Yeah. Uh, one of the things you inspired me to think, Ryan, is that when you started talking about our memory sort of intake versus what we are, our attention. When you're trying to make positive changes, you're trying to interrupt patterns. And
Hmm.
of course, patterns and habits are very powerful, right? And because they're powerful, I always say they're wonderful servants and tyrannical masters.
Mm.
And so right, so if we want to increase our personal power, one of the abilities and skills to work on is the ability to select and alter the patterns or habits that we have. And I think generally speaking, we all struggle mightily because of the power of those patterns and those habits. And one of the keys, it looks like to me, in making positive changes lies with that attention, what we're putting attention to. It seems
Hmm.
like it seems like our agency is very tied to where we direct our attention. Do you have any kind of, does that give you any kind of fuel for thought, a comment on that particular connection as far as the how our attention works?
Oh, absolutely. So again, in order for something to really be retained as memory, we need alertness and we need focus. And so those two are necessary and sufficient to adequately receive a memory or receive information. Alertness is simply what level of conscious arousal do we have, and that could be anything from our conversation right now, where we're awake, alert, quote unquote. Well, arousal is kind of a funny word, but that's consciously aroused. Let's just say that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's you're energized.
yes,
You're put energy's going outward, or your
correct.
effort is being put towards something.
Correct.
Yeah.
Versus, again, people who I unfortunately see in the hospital who are comatose, who
Mhm.
don't have any cognitive faculties or their higher order brain is not operational. They're in like a deep sleep state, so they're effectively unconscious and aren't awake enough to receive information. And that's part of the test that I administer when I examine people. I have to test are those things working. Now, there are people who can be awake and alert and appear that way, but they don't have the ability to focus. And there are a variety of reasons for that. And there are techniques and ways that we can improve our level of alertness or focus. Perhaps the one of the most common ways is with pharmacology or pharmacotherapy. So caffeine being a very powerful method that I think most people are familiar with, which when used appropriately, by the way, is highly effective and something I recommend. Caffeine appears neuroprotective anyway. So from our longevity and brain health perspective, appears to substantially lower the risk of conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's later in life. However, when used at higher than normal doses and too late in the day, it can interrupt sleep, and over time that can be harmful. But essentially, coffee within 30 to 45 minutes of awakening, 2 to 5 cups a day, depending on your tolerance and preference and so on and so forth, can be highly effective at improving focus. And that does so by blocking a receptor called adenosine. So did we talk about this at all last time? I don't remember.
No, I
Sleep.
don't recall this at all.
So there's two, I mean, without going down the sleep rabbit hole, there are two main processes that regulate sleep. There's your circadian rhythm, so your kind of day-night cycle that's regulated by light, so which is why early morning light is so important.
Did talk about that.
Yep.
You told the story about, making sure to get exposed to light first thing in the morning, sunlight.
You got it.
Yeah.
So that helps set that biological rhythm that most of the cells in your body in some way are responsive to. So very helpful, but equally important for achieving deep sleep, because I think we were talking about this in the context of sleep. It helps you maintain alertness and focus in the daytime because it keeps your hormonal balance in check, right? So that's important. But the second contributor to sleep onset is what's called the sleep pressure. And we may not have talked about this,
I don't
but
recall that term.
there's a neurotransmitter called adenosine that slowly builds up in your brain throughout the day. And essentially, once you cross a certain threshold, hence this rising pressure, when you cross a threshold, you start to feel sleepy. And really, the only thing that allows that adenosine to reset is your sleep stages overnight. So the levels drop, you get quality sleep, you wake up the next day, and your adenosine levels are lowered, and the cycle starts all over again. So it's all this kind of 24-hour cycle. Caffeine is an adenosine receptor antagonist, meaning it blocks or delays the onset of that sleep pressure, which helps keep you focused. So that's one way that caffeine is a massively powerful tool. Now, when caffeine wears off, you can also, I mean, the adenosine is still building and floating around. So when the caffeine wears off and the adenosine binds the receptors, that can be responsible for some of that kind of caffeine crash that people feel or part of the withdrawal. It's a little more complex than that. But so anyway, that's how that works and how that sort of delays that adenosine sleep pressure and helps keep people focused. So that's one way to do this. Another way to help improve focus would be to do anything that involves physical movement. So physical movement, and I don't mean just from the longevity perspective and all that, but anytime you move and you contract large muscles, let's just say this, number one, it tends to elevate your heart rate, which elevates your cardiac output, which again delivers that glucose, oxygen, nutrients to your brain. So that's all helpful, number one. Number two, when you contract large muscles and when you kind of, elevate the energy in your body, your adrenal glands that sit on top of your kidneys release a neurotransmitter hormone called epinephrine or adrenaline, right? And adrenaline is part of what's responsible for that fight or flight kind of response, which
Sure.
in short bursts is okay, but long term we don't want that elevated. Now, here's what's interesting to me. Adrenaline or epinephrine cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. So you might think, okay, so I've got this stuff floating around, my heart rate's elevated, my muscles are tensed, I'm kind of everything's I'm sort of amped up, but how in the world is this affecting my brain? Well, it turns out epinephrine or adrenaline can bind to a nerve called the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve, you have 12 pairs of cranial nerves that come out of your brainstem. Your vagus nerve is connected to almost every visceral organ in your entire body cavity. And adrenaline can bind to that vagus nerve and send a signal back up to your brain that then activates a center in your brainstem that releases another neurotransmitter called norepinephrine. And norepinephrine projects widely throughout the brain. And this is what's responsible for our focus and also helps the alertness to learn. So if I go through all that nerd speak to say that if you want to focus, I thought about this actually before you're asking about memory. I was thinking about this. I got a massage today, which was really nice, but I was
Oh,
really
yeah, nice.
relaxed and kind of like a parasympathetic state. And like I got home and I was like, oh man, like I need to be on with Tom and like I need to be a little more alert. So I had a couple sips of coffee and I didn't like do jumping jacks, but like I was thinking about that whole process to improve my focus. And about that time, I got, energized enough that I thought, okay, let's just go ahead and do it. But I literally considered like knocking out 50 push-ups to activate that to get my norepinephrine levels in my brain up. I think I'm good. I just get excited talking about this stuff. But if somebody, so if anyone's listening to this and you're feeling slow, sluggish, tired, or just your focus is off, just do, I mean, just like 2 minutes of like a brief exercise snack, which maybe we covered. So like air squats, jumping jacks, push-ups, wall sits, stair sprints, like 1 to 2 minutes of that can really elevate your focus. And this not just in the moment, but this can have an effect over several hours, even afterwards, and improve your learning, which is pretty cool.
One of the things that I was wondering about is the 2, 3, or 4 o'clock. If I sit, I might start getting sleepy.
Hmm.
If I don't sit, I won't get sleepy. If
Hmm.
I'm doing, I don't really get sleepy every day. It's if
Hmm.
I'm sitting down and I'm like working on something that I'm just either working on the screen or writing or reading or something along those lines.
Hmm.
In that time frame, I'll get sleepy. And even times where I feel like I'm tired, say just before dinner, it'll pass and I'll usually get another wave, another so what's happening there in general, would you say, Ryan?
Yep. So I think two things at play. Number one, again, you literally just hit the nail on the head. So sitting, when your anti-gravity muscles are relaxed, you're in a more relaxed state, and this feeds into this second kind of rhythm that we're going to talk about in a second. But if you're having a dip in kind of your daily focus rhythm and you're relaxed, it's going to be hard to focus, right? However, if you're standing, even if you're just contracting anti-gravity muscles, I think we've talked about this, but I don't have a chair in my office for that purpose.
Mm.
Because when I want to record a podcast with a friend, or I'm working on something here, I'm dictating my audiobook, whatever I'm doing, I want to be standing in an engaged posture, because to resist gravity, what do you have to contract? Well, your calf muscles, your quad muscles, your glutes, your core, your back. And so that can be enough of a stimulation to activate this pathway that we were just talking about through from the peripheral adrenaline or epinephrine up through the vagus nerve to the brain. So you're doing enough of that by standing, in all
Mm.
likelihood, that helps get you over that lull. So standing alone can be massively powerful to help people with focus, which is really cool.
So this is why people say sitting is the new smoking.
There are a lot of reasons for that. And yes, I mean, being sedentary appears more harmful than smoking, which is wild.
Yeah.
Neither are good, to be
Right,
clear.
right,
So,
right.
clearly, but yes, the relative increase in all-cause mortality from being sedentary appears worse than actually smoking, which is pretty
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
Um, and we're really splitting the hair. And again, to be crystal clear, I do not endorse any kind of cigarette, tobacco, nothing, no use. But
Right.
um,
It's not to say, hey, smoking is not that bad. It's saying sitting is actually way worse than you thought.
sitting is way worse. And this is where I'm really splitting hairs here, but there appears to be some evidence, and again, just hear me out on this with a grain of salt. But nicotine appears to be neuroprotective in some capacity. And it's been an interesting observation for years that cigarette smokers don't develop Parkinson's, for example.
Mm.
Just something that doesn't happen. So there are some ongoing studies that are looking at just synthetic nicotine without the tobacco, without the smoke, without all of it, to see, hey, could this be neuroprotective enough? Now, again, it's habit forming. It can be addictive. It does elevate blood pressure through some of that epinephrine, norepinephrine mechanism, but it helps with focus, which is part of why people like it and part of the addictive pathway. But anyway, so interesting side note. But again,
Yeah.
don't smoke. It's bad for you. So anyway, but I say all that to say anything that's going to activate that norepinephrine pathway is going to help improve focus. So that's number one. Standing is a good way to do that, or moving period is a good way to do that, and lower your chances of dying of anything. So great. The other point I wanted to bring up, Tom, because you mentioned this afternoon lull. So within that circadian rhythm, which is about 24 hours, it's a little longer than 24 hours actually. Done experiments to prove that too, which I'll
Mm.
skip for now. But slightly, that's like 24 hours and 15 minutes or something. So if you go
Mm.
long enough, people's day-night cycles reverse if they're not oriented to the sun, but just for what that's worth.
Wow, that's cool.
It
Sort of like
is.
sort of like the tides, right? The tide doesn't come in every all at the same time all the time. It has different rhythms and maybe they're related. Who knows?
Yes. Yes. But within the 24-hour cycle, we have these mini cycles, and one of those is called our ultradian rhythm, ultradian, ultradian. Anyway, I've heard it pronounced both ways. But this is about a 90-minute cycle. And so as part of this, and part of my recommendations when I'm coaching, people on their business or whatever, is to say, hey, past 90 minutes, your performance, cognitive performance is going to fall off a cliff in line with this natural rhythm. and trying to push through that is not a great idea. So I recommend people focus on deep work in a monotasking block, meaning, I mean, if you can, put your phone on do not disturb or airplane mode or whatever, dial into your best work one task at a time. Because when you're fragmented and the email's open and you're getting text messages and you've got people coming in your door and in and out, this whole task switching and interruption is not maximally productive for your brain.
Mhm.
And it takes, I want to say, gosh, don't hold me to this, but I want to say it takes an average of 20-ish minutes to recover from an interruption. It's like
Is
like
it
longer than
really?
it. Yeah, it's a long time. I mean, for your brain to really reset and focus back on that task. I may have that wrong, but that's what I recall from the studies I've looked at. But in either case, even if it's 30 seconds or 2 minutes, I mean, if that's happening all the time, that's very inefficient. So focusing on one thing at a time, making sure you're protecting that time and getting your highest and best work done, and making sure that's in a block of about 90 minutes. That is optimal for focus. And then after that, just pushing away from the screens, getting outside, going for a walk, taking a break, and doing something not cognitively stimulating for 10 to 15 minutes. Ideally, incorporating movement. That will help get you through that lull. That'll get you ready for that next 90-minute push and from there forward. And again, as we look at that rhythm throughout the day, most people experience kind of a lull sort of mid-afternoon after that in the middle of this kind of midday cycle. And they're hormonal and neurologic reasons for this based on how these sort of mini rhythms work throughout your day. And so again, I think that that's fine if you even want to take like a I don't know, 10-minute break to meditate. There's a neuroscientist, Andrew Huberman, who likes this thing called non-sleep deep rest or yoga nidra. He's very big on that, where you go through this sort of trance-like meditative, almost like light sleep phase that seems very restorative, and there's data behind that. I think meditation, I think movement, just relaxing, I think that all works fine too. But there are a handful of things you can do. So working with that rhythm, I think, rather than against it, is very important for people to understand to get the most out of their focus.
You're helping us understand the mechanism of how our brain's working in terms of, I'm trying to marshal resources to get something done or pay attention to something, and these are the ways that I can, if I'm starting to fade or I want to get better at that. These are tips that you recommend that people incorporate and pay attention to. When I think of attention, there's another layer of attention, which perhaps is not necessarily that they don't have the capacity to pay attention. It's
Hmm.
that their choice of what they're paying attention to is not is being structured, is being directed by their existing habits or patterns rather than the new pattern they at one level would like to impose.
Hmm.
So do you have any thoughts about how somebody might, let's just say I'm good on my focus. I'm not playing the multitasking mirage game, but let's just say this week I was going to work on, I don't know, one thing that I have a lot of people work on is active listening. So let's,
Hmm.
they a lot of their opportunities for improvement are I really need to be a better listener. I need to connect with people more meaningfully and give them more space to express themselves. I say, cool, all right, good. Um, let's just make sure you're going to do at least one active listening session per day and
Hmm.
keep track of it. Well, that only works if you remember to do it, right? So, right. So I'm thinking in terms of imposing something new
Hmm.
on a habit. Do you have any thoughts from that
Hmm.
perspective?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So these are all great points. So with respect to forming any new habit, you want to lower the barrier of resistance as much as possible. So make it easy, and that make it the most likely thing you will do. And
Ah,
how might that look? Again, another example I give in the book is my morning exercise routine. I kind of did this sort of unknowingly and fell into it. And it wasn't until I actually read Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is a fantastic book, by the way, for anyone listening, or Thomas, you nodding. So if you've read it, that's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. It's very recommended.
Yes, very instructive. But there's neuroscience behind this, and the idea is that I think he may give an example of like if you want to learn how to play the guitar, or if you want to play more guitar and get better at it, if the guitar is in a case in the closet and the pick is in a drawer somewhere, and you got to move the clothes, get the thing out, open the box, find the pick, and then go sit down and play guitar. You're never gonna play guitar, right? It's
Yeah.
never gonna happen. But if your pick is in the strings and it's in the stand and it's in the living room and you're looking at it every day, and that's where you sit when you come home, or it's where you wind down, or it's in your office, or pick a place that is visible and it's going to trigger that memory that, oh yeah, there's my guitar. I'm going to go play it. Much easier to to go play guitar. My example with the gym thing is that this is really in an effort to not wake Corey up in the mornings. I pre-grind my coffee the night before. I have my workout clothes laid out next to the bed. And literally I just like roll out of bed, like toss my clothes on, coffee's made, I've got water, I'm out the door and boom. And like it's literally easier for me to go exercise than it is to do anything else because that's the habit. The routine I literally fall into in the morning. So if somebody's wanting to add a new habit like active listening, maybe it's not as easy as laying clothes out, but wherever that environment is, or wherever that workspace is, leave yourself an easy reminder. I mean, put post-it notes on your computer screen or on your mirror in the morning or whatever the environment is where you need to be engaging in that behavior, you need a reminder as clear as a yellow sticky note in your face. Some people like the background on their phone, for example. So instead of a picture of your dog or whatever, put the habit that you want to build because we check our phones. I should probably know this stat too, but I mean it's hundreds of times a day, right? And
Yeah.
thankfully you can set limits on these kinds of things. But just make it easy and lower that barrier of resistance, and that's really going to be helpful. That's kind of point number one. Number two, the reason that you have to have this conversation with anyone in the first place, the average adult attention span today is literally like 8.25 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
And what's funny, Tom, because I'm new to to really being on social media and like posting regularly. When I look at if I get 500 views or 3,000 views or whatever, the average watch time on every video is literally 8 or 9 seconds. It's hilarious. I mean, it's just like it's so in line with the data. It's like, wow.
What is that about? What, like, why would it be like? Because you're not getting anything. So
Yes.
how is that being? What's the perceptual process that gives us that result?
Yes. So the problem is again these devices are engineered to give us the most dopamine for the least amount of effort possible. And that's termed a reward prediction error. So if your brain calculates that I need to give 100% effort, well say 50% effort on a task and I'm rewarded 100% dopamine, well that was better than expected. I'm going to do that thing again. And when you're
Mhm.
scrolling, and it's a picture of a car I like, or a football team I like, or a hot girl that I like, or like whatever is on your feed, right? You're just going to keep scrolling and getting those many hits of dopamine. And before you know it, you spent 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, and you go, oh my gosh, like an hour just went by. What was I doing for an hour? Well, that's you're just down this rabbit hole of these neural circuits.
You're being enslaved in a way.
Yes. And that brings me to my next point, and this is where part of where I want to direct our conversation because this is critical and this is relevant. When you are telling people that you need to work on active listening, you are training a part of their brain called the prefrontal cortex. Now, again, a bit of neuroanatomy. I'll try to make this as easy as I can, but the front third of our brain is called our frontal lobe. It's our motor lobe, our planning lobe, our doing lobe, and the frontmost part of that is the prefrontal cortex. So in front of the frontal lobe, it's kind of right behind your forehead here. And the different parts of it that do different things, but let's just, for the sake of today, there's prefrontal cortex. That's like your CEO, your executive of your mind. And the reason I bring this up is that to have agency and maximum control over that thing, you need the focus, you need the attention, the arousal, all of that. But you can train the connections and the thickness. You can change the anatomic substrate of your prefrontal cortex by doing certain things. So you can strengthen it and get better at active listening, at focus, at tasks, at objective thinking, all these things. Or you can get worse at it. You can go the other direction. And when you go the other direction, you tend to be in a more reactive state, and the connections in your brain that are linked to what are called your amygdala, which is like your fear center, become strengthened. And so that's where you're more in kind of reactive, vigilant mode. You're scrolling, you're not thinking, you're not engaged. And this can literally rob you of agency, as you said, or becoming enslaved to these other processes. And I really believe, unfortunately, the world we live in wires us to more of the amygdala hypervigilant reactive state. And we do less and less that activates the prefrontal cortex and keeps us in control.
This is a pretty heavy, huge thing to me because, and I can kind of relate. And it takes, for instance, I wrote a novel. That's not an easy thing to do, especially the novel that my brother and I wrote. It was very technical, and I had to learn a lot and collaborate, and the technical aspect had to work in the story, and it was this big, huge spaghetti puzzle in 3D that's moving. And so it took a tremendous amount of effort and time and focus to do it. And so I know I can focus and I do have that ability, but I also feel like it's harder now than it used to be. And I feel like I've fallen into some of the environmental degradation of that. And I pride myself on not being a slave to my phone and not being, but I am. I just think I'm not, right? So
Mhm.
it's like it really is very, very stealth in terms of how it comes up on
Mhm.
you. And I think
Yes.
most people are ensnared in some way, fashion, or form. So then what do we do is my question.
So this is where lifestyle design and being very intentional about what you feed your brain, I mean, quite
Yeah.
literally and metaphorically, and how do you set your life up to be maximally successful here? So again, this is why we talked about the core four on the first show, but just as a high level, real quick, daily movement, proper sleep, proper nutrition, and effective stress management and relationships. Those kind of go together.
Okay.
These are things that we all really need to spend time on because this is what moves the needle when it comes to maintaining the appropriate connections and downregulating or getting rid of the behaviors, the habits, the connections that we don't want. Because habits are just neural circuits. They're just they're the behavioral representation of circuits in your brain. That's all this is.
Just a quick question on that point. The degradation of the frontal cortex due to that dopamine cycle that we're exposed
Mhm.
to environmentally,
Mhm.
it degrades those core four, but intentionally strengthening those core four can offset or countermand perhaps those erosionary forces. Am I understanding you right there?
Absolutely, yeah, and yeah. So I suppose I've not literally said that. I guess I've implied it, but you are absolutely correct. So just as these connections can be weakened or shrunk or taken away, uh, for example, let's just say somebody is chronically stressed. They're not sleeping well. They're waking up. They're groggy. They're making impulsive decisions at work. Their cortisol regulation's off, which tends to make people crave more kind of sugary and ultra processed foods. So they're reaching for that. Their cortisol spikes again. Their glucose crashes they're scrolling on Instagram or whatever. Like, I mean, how much of America does this every single day, right? I mean, tens, if not hundreds of millions of people live this very life, and I see it every day. So that behavior right there, that lifestyle, literally shrinks the volume of the prefrontal cortex. The thing thins, so you lose gray matter, which is where the cells live. The connections become less robust and the projections to other areas, like your memory centers, become less robust. So it's actually harder to form new memories in the setting of all of this. Uh, Not to mention the
Hmm.
cascade of neuroinflammation that this can set off, and I mean, the insulin resistance and other parts of the body that we know can trigger or premature degradation of neurons that can predispose people to Alzheimer's, so on and so forth. Poor sleep contributing to decreased lymphatic clearance of amyloid, for example, that elevates Alzheimer's risk. I mean, this is not just day to day, how do I feel? How's my performance? This has profound, lasting health implications if we want to live a long, healthy life. Not to mention, of course, the short term performance and what we're talking about today. So that's the bad news. The good news, or how do we get around to rewire this, is by altering our behavior patterns. And this is where habit stacking in the positive direction can become so effective because if you have one win, so make you lower the bar, lower the resistance to just if it is active listening or it is just I mean like 6 minutes of movement a day. I don't know if we talked about I know I briefly mentioned exercise snacks a minute ago, but Tom, if you do just 6 minutes a day, so 2 minutes 3 times a day of I don't know, like I said, those air squats, jumping jacks, wall sits, whatever, that lowers your all-cause mortality, which is like your risk of dying of anything by about 40%. So
Wow, that's incredible.
massive win there for 6 minutes a day. That's all you got to do. Number one. Number two, if you do it morning, kind of mid-afternoon and evening, or maybe not, don't do it too late, but it's very activating because you're getting those muscles active. It's getting the norepinephrine levels in the brain up. You're focused. You're doing better work. If you can start to stack these things and increase your performance, now I've got the focus to go work on my active listening. I'm listening better. I'm getting better results at work. That's more motivating. My confidence is higher. My income's better. Maybe I can afford to hire a trainer now. Like you see how these things can very quickly compound in the right direction versus the alternative. But as you're adding these in, exercise, again, appropriate sleep, any kind of mental challenge or task. So this doesn't have to be something as robust as learning a new language, although that would be an extreme one. Anything outside your direct sphere of expertise, reading a book, whether it's your novel or my book, anything that's cognitively stimulating also grows the thickens the prefrontal cortex, grows those connections, increases your agency. So exercise, any kind of cognitive training or habit, proper sleep, the right food, meditation. I mean, all of these things are known to strengthen this area. So that's why I harp on them because there's so much interesting data behind all of this.
Yeah, I mean, learning musical instruments, I think, is big.
Yes.
Online, there's so many online courses. I mean, you can learn about so many cool things in a really very affordable, if not free, sort of
Yep.
way.
Yep.
It's, I mean, the world is amazing, and we've never had more opportunity, but we've also never had as much danger too, right? It's
Yes.
kind of both.
No, and that gets me back to the intentionality of it, Tom. I mean, you're right. We've got the best tools. We're more connected, yet somehow we're more disconnected, more remote, and more, unoptimized than we've ever been before. There was actually, of all things, I think I saw this on X earlier, or formerly Twitter. But there was somebody who was proposing the massive disruption of our education system with the advent of AI and the democratization of information. Think about just a few short, I mean, not even decades ago, I mean, just a matter of years ago, where you would have to go, get into or be accepted to a university of some sort, where you were paying tens of thousands of, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to achieve some sort of higher education, to even have access to this kind of information that would allow you the opportunity to go get the job you want, to learn the skills that you need, so on and so forth. A lot of these courses are available. I mean, like Harvard, MIT, like there are these suites of courses that you can take. I mean, even at a graduate level for free. Number one. Number two is the AIs are getting better in terms of the application to teaching, and this even gets into, what do we
Yeah.
look like? What primary education? How do we teach first principles thinking? Excuse me, rather than just sort of following this 200 plus year old outdated system that we're in now. I mean, literally, that's how old the thing
Yeah,
is.
we don't need farmers and factory workers anymore. So
It turns out we'll have robots even for all of that, even though we
yeah.
have robots for most of it now. So yeah, I mean, we're in a very interesting time. And again, double-edged sword is that there's so much opportunity, yet it's creating so much friction and anxiety for people because of the uncertainty and because of the concern over job loss and what does the future look like. And I mean, I really it's rattling a lot of people's cages in my world.
One of the things that I've seen a trend, and I think you're right, an example of somebody right in the forefront of this kind of trend is to band together and not try to go at your own. So the Transcend Health groups is part of that. It's daunting to try to change yourself, try to change, like face all the kind of dark things that we've been talking about here. But the good news is really it's bad advice to do it by yourself. You really do need to band together. And the good news is there's lots of people, lots of options to band together with. Do
Yes.
you want to talk a little bit about how it works with your view, how you run Transcend Health as group, and what you see the benefit of that is, Ryan?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity. So again, when we think back to how we evolved, how are we designed, what's our social evolution, we evolved in tribes, right? And we evolved in these tight-knit communities where we felt safe and we had people who brought different strengths to the table and who could all contribute in their own way. And that's where I think this whole idea of group learning or the mastermind model that's become so popular has become so effective because reverts not the right word, but I guess in a way it is a reversion to what I view as a positive feature of our kind of older social evolution because our social and technological evolution again has done this, and our brains don't evolve or develop that quickly. So that's why there's all this friction because we're exposed.
Stone Age brains in a modern world.
There's the title of your next book, Tom.
That's your book.
I
I'm not
love
the
it.
brain guy. You are.
Stone Age Brains and Modern. That's a great title, honestly. Wow, I have to remember that one. Anyway, whatever. I'll send you royalties for it. Um,
Somebody might already have it. I've heard that before, but anyway, go ahead.
that or you misremembered it. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't count on anything. I don't know what I know.
Um, but with this in mind, to create a safe environment where people can come together and learn and share ideas. And here, I guess, from an expert, I mean, I obviously bring what I know to the table from my training, from my background. I post new information, and we just try to keep each other accountable. I mean, that's the idea. I even when we started, I was doing this kind of baseline series of lectures that I called our foundational content about kind of core four type material, your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise, all very important stuff. But now that everyone's gone through that, we've done some niche topics like maybe microplastics or how to prevent Alzheimer's or something like this. But now we really have an open discussion format. All the prior lectures are recorded and people have access to that content. And I will very likely also put together like just a crash course of like, hey, here's the high yield stuff. So go watch this or do this to get new people up to speed. But it really is more of just a tribal discussion, and people bring their issues of the day, or they'll comment. We have a private membership portal called Circle, so the calls are twice a month, but at 24/7, 365, people have access to the app. So maybe I am contributing to some of this overstimulation of technology, having access to Circle.
It's a double-edged sword. It
Yeah.
serves, and we got to be careful both.
Although I don't think that people are on it that often.
No,
But they get on there and they read the updates or they read whatever, my post is or the questions that I put.
you're not sitting there trying to figure out, okay, how can I stimulate the dopamine to get them more involved in the
Absolutely not. I'm very focused on the prefrontal cortex as much as I can. But they'll comment and then we'll discuss whatever the kind of the issues of the week are and go through the literature and go through the mechanisms and basically just do this, but with just a group of people, which has been really fun. And that, I mean, that's kind of the nuts and bolts and the how. But Tom, I mean, it does like, I get emotional when I think about the transformations I watched people have. And most recently, we had one of our members who basically just gave like an on the spot open testimonial in front of a group. Corey and I went back to Austin last week and I gave a talk to some of our lifestyle investor friends out there. And one of our members was there and he just spoke so openly and transparently about the weight he's lost and how much his sleep has improved and just how much better he feels and how much sharper he is. And like, I didn't ask him to do that. He just did it because he was so excited. And to see that and to know that this is actually making an impact in people's lives is like, yes, like this is why I'm doing this to
Yeah,
actually move the needle. And the book again is the next best way I know to do that for people that aren't part of the group. So to get that out in the world. So that'll be ready September 9th. Very excited about that.
awesome.
And then for people that really need a higher touch point, I have opened one-on-one private coaching. So that's more for, again, business owners, CEOs, executives, people that have maybe tried stuff and are still really having a hard time putting it together and need just a higher touch point where I go through all their records and everything. And again, just to watch the transformations there with everything people are struggling with is very powerful. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. That's where we are.
That's awesome. Well, we'll put, I know that Transcend Health is a link that we can put in and make sure people can avail themselves of that resource because it's important. And I know you're not the only one in this space, but as far as I've seen, you cannot go wrong. And you can probably tell already with the passion and knowledge that Ryan brings to the table through now two discussions we've had here. Um, you know, it's because you said it earlier when you're talking about everybody's a health expert, everybody's a psychologist, everybody's a self-proclaimed expert or guru in things. And I appreciate that they want to help and contribute and give the world, a gift best they know how. But there's a difference between people who know what they're doing and have actually put points on the board and those who are aspiring to that and they can fall into the traps, right? The easy path, the thing that sounds good but doesn't really get you down the road. I mean, one of the things we talk about in the mentor machine, the eye of power, is it's not glamorous. It's the little things every day. That's where the magic, all the power is in the little tiny things that
Yes.
there isn't this big, oh, here's a pill or here's a thing. It's like it's the little incremental things that you do that add up is where the battles are won and lost. And a lot of people are conditioned to think that it doesn't have to be that way, but I don't know of another path than that. I haven't seen it.
No, Tom, I think you couldn't be more correct. And to be clear, I have a very collaborative abundance mindset around this. I mean, I don't by no means am I the best person, the only person. I mean, there are plenty of people out there who I think are doing massive amounts of good in the world.
Sure.
I mentioned Andrew Huberman. I think he's really onto something, and I think he's very quality. Rhonda Patrick is one that I like. Peter Attia is one that I like. There's some
Mm,
very positive examples of very intelligent people who are putting out quality content. And then there are those that aren't. And what bothers me about those that aren't is that they don't have the qualifications. I mean, Huberman's got a PhD. There's a bug. Sorry.
mm. No worries.
Peter Attia and I are MDs. I'm a board certified neurologist. I've been in the military. Like I've gone through the training pipeline, right? I've gotten the credentials and I have the experience. So and I stand behind that. But people that don't, I think that part of the danger is they don't understand the context behind the foundation that takes, I mean, shoot, I spent at least 12 plus years in higher education, plus all my years of practice now, another 8 or 10, or whatever I'm coming up on. That's a lot of time. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying that someone can't get there faster because with technology and everything, okay, maybe you could, but it takes enough time and reps and perspective and experience to be able to understand all the context behind everything. I think is really the word I'm looking for. How to interpret studies, how to interpret data, what does that mean? And every time a new paper comes out, somebody throws out a tagline or a buzzword, but they don't know how to interpret what it actually where it fits in the compendium of what we already know. These are critically important skills when we really are assessing maximum benefit and risk for people. And so I say all that to say for your listeners, just vet who you listen to. Again, be very judicious about who you let into your brain and who you listen to, and just I mean, does it pass a basic sniff test? Like, I mean, I know I think I gave the example earlier. Like, you wouldn't want me, changing the oil in your car. Like, I don't have that skill set, but figure out who's telling you the thing that you're listening to. And another part of that sniff test is this person trying to sell me something?
Right.
I found that very often there's a supplement or a product or something that's going to just totally fix your life that may or may not have data behind it, or you really dig and you go, what is this stuff? So those may be two easy decision filters. Just vet people, fact check them, and are they trying to sell me something? Those are easy points of trying to figure out where's somebody's heart and mind and their credentials behind all this.
That's good advice, Ryan. Hey, thanks so much. I don't know that I feel any better about the ephemeral aspect of my memory, but but I do think that there's to take anything away from our discussion, it's the idea of really connecting with people and people that prove themselves trustworthy and that really want the best for you. I mean, to me, it's the spirit, it's knowledge, and as you pointed out, and those qualifications we can check, but you can tell the spirit too. I think. By how people are oriented and what their focus is on. If they're focused on how great they are versus how much this might help you or what's specifically true and aspirational for you, I think that's another good way to find your tribe, so to speak.
No, I think that's sound advice, Tom. And again, it does get back to that tribal kind of upbringing, and this is why kind of the Zoom and the virtual world is a little weird because you can get some of this over Zoom, but when you're really in person with somebody or you're around a group of people, again, your brain's ability to recognize patterns and
Yeah.
detect just subtle changes in behavior, how someone stands, how they carry themselves, their level of confidence, all of this. These are very subtle calculations that your brain is making on the order of, I don't know, thousands of times a second.
Absolutely. I mean, even just taking you and I as an example. So we first met virtually, right? We had a great conversation, a connection. We obviously are passionate about some of the same things. And then we had the chance to spend time together in person
Yep.
in Austin for a few days. And then we come together again here. And if you took that in person out, the kind of conversation we had today would not have been the same. It would have been good, it'd been fine, but it would not have been the same as because we had that in person over a extended period of time experience together. It changes the way that we perceive each other and you know, the whole thing, and it infuses. And this is times everybody you know, times every experience you have, right?
Yes. And even as you say that, Tom, back to this like even idea of orientation, because this just popped into my head too. But there were times you and I were talking, we were at a conference, so we are talking, outside in between the meetings. I was sitting kind of, well, I guess to your left, but really behind you as you were speaking. But I remember watching you stand and face the stage and speak, and I have these these snapshots in my mind of you offering an insightful message that again you or somebody on the other side of the room wouldn't have gotten, right? Because you're in the middle of speaking and thinking about what you want to say, and I'm here receiving and looking at you from a certain direction. So this whole idea of perspective and just the way we take in information, it's so fascinating to me that there's no substitute for this human connection that we all share. And as we continue to move into this advancing digital age, again with AI, technology, all these things we talk about, I think that's going to be more and more important as in some ways we're losing our career identity and meaning because the jobs are going to change. I mean, I think there's very little debate about that. Even in healthcare, I think that one of my predictions is that an AI will be doing the heavy lifting and your doctor will be just kind of affirming what the machine is coming up with. I really, I mean, we're basically there. I think it's a
Yeah.
matter of short order before that becomes.
We need prompt engineering. We need navigational help.
Mhm.
Just like we have navigators to choose among the dizzying array of healthcare, Medicare. My brother, his job is to help people choose the right Medicare once they turn 65. And people need that. They can't see the whole picture. And even
Yes,
if you had asked AI, it still wouldn't be the same as a person that's got you. That is,
correct.
that. So I don't see that going away. Keep going. I kind of.
No, no, I was you beat me to it, but I think that the human element is what really is going to have more and more value. So
Yeah.
maintaining that human connection and maintaining what it means to really, as you said, to have that genuine connection with people, I think that's going to be critical because the rest of it, I mean, the expertise and me or anybody coming in a white coat or your CPA coming in with the pencil, oh, it's not pencils, computers, whatever. What's a pencil? Um,
the green shade.
Yeah, there you go.
Right
Yeah,
now.
and the lamp, right? Um, that's going to be done by the AIs. But it's the connection and it's the validation, the emotional connection, that tribal mentality that you mentioned. That's where the real value is going to be, I think. And in maintaining that humanness, that story, and then creation from that place, I think is going to be very important too. Anywho.
All right. Well, I think that's a pretty good place for us to land the plane, Ryan. Thank you so much, man. It's great to be with you again. I haven't committed, but I really do want to be out in Colorado with you in September. So hopefully we'll see each other in person again then.
Oh, I'd love it. I'm bummed. It takes 6 months every time, so we got to figure out something in the meantime.
I got to get down to Atlanta, so I got to make an excuse and get down visit you.
Come on down. We'll have you down anytime. Show you a good time. We love it
All
here.
right. That's a deal.
All right, Tom.
All right. Thanks so much.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. Ryan, always a pleasure to be with you. Thanks again. Couldn't get enough of that. We're going to do it again, actually. As a matter of fact, in the moments that I paused and said goodbye, we already conceived a third episode to do together. So we'll make sure to do that in the near future. But just the things that I just jotted down to reinforce, just to as I tend to want to do in the I Power podcast. Um, the basic idea of the brain as a processor, right? So it's a thing that is a tool that we're using to comprehend the world, designed to make sense of the world. It's done through narrative, through stories, and since we're beings of limited power, limited perceptive power, we kind of fill in the blanks, and so it's disconcerting when we find out the things we filled in with weren't exactly as solid as we hoped or thought. Um, the idea of what a job it has to do 11 million uh, bits per second we're exposed to, and we can only conceive in our conscious minds of 50 out of 11 million. So literally a drop in the ocean. That's really incredible. And the job that it does takes up so much energy. 2% of the body weight's the brain, but 20% of the energy consumption. Absolutely amazing. uh, we got into a lot of the attention piece, and I want to dive more into that. So we talk about that a lot, but it's sort of where we put our searchlight, where we put our eyes on, our ears on, is really what we elevate and value. And what we value tends to be, what we get sort of more of in our life, what we pay our attention, that which we pay attention to, that's what we measure grows, or we pay attention to, we get more of that. So if we're focused on powerful, positive things and working in that dimension, it's going to generally be a better strategy to move forward than than focus on the things that could go wrong, worrying. In the Eye of Power, we talk about consternation, which is the story of fear that keeps us from taking the risks or making the sacrifices necessary for a positive change, or even in the trap in the pain quadrant, which is, if I can get my hand to move in the right way, there. uh, Conjecture, which is another, we play little games. What if this? What if that? Um, and so that can keep us from moving forward too. So again, this is a focus and an attention issue. And the tips that Ryan offered us there was just things like, hey, you can use caffeine, you can use exercise, you can use the fact that you don't have to sit, you can stand and do things, movement, uh, getting in a group and being whatever positive change you want to make. Don't do it yourself. Um, he touched briefly on something that we've talked about before, which is the illusion that we can multitask. Truth is, Ryan is an expert. He's the one, if he says it, I'm going to believe him. Uh, you really can't, because it's an investment of time and energy to make shifts from one focus to another. And that investment of energy and to get ramped back up to the same intensity takes more time and effort than what we normally perceive. So it's very inefficient, is what he said. Uh, he mentioned about just the techniques about how to ingrain a new habit. So that's uh, even sticky notes or backgrounds on your phone, or anything that's going to help keep something front of mind. If you want to play the guitar, put the guitar in a room with you, that kind of thing. So he mentioned habit stacking. So the idea that one good thing can lead to another. So just one first step, then we build on that and we build from that. So I think this is all fantastic advice. And I want to just thank Ryan. Thank you again for joining us. And thank you for listening to us on the Eye of Power podcast. This has been the Eye of Power podcast with Tom Dardick. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'd also like to thank my brother, Scott Dardick, for the music and his music production. If you'd like to reach me, simply email Tom at dardickcommunications.com.